As long as you smile, your head to the when in the midst of sorrow, you can't see how can looking down. Optimistic, another day, tomorrow will bring. Oh, be optimistic. You hear the voice of reason telling you this could never be done. Optimistic, no matter how reality seems, just hold on to your when things around you crumble, no, you don't have to stumble and fall. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Again, welcome to tonight's show, Life with Shenita, Why We Matter. I am so excited again to have the privilege of having some distinguished gentlemen to share the platform with me tonight to discuss why they matter. I hope that you will enjoy this broadcast as you have previous ones. I would like for you to also share and like this broadcast. Like and share this broadcast. Also, just a few housekeeping rules. We do a weekly drawing, and for those who like and share the broadcast, we will do a drawing for those individuals. When you share the broadcast, please list in the chat for everyone to see that you shared the broadcast. Please include the word shared the broadcast and tag me in your shared post. So, Life with Shenita started with the goal to help people overcome life's challenges and to encourage them to live a vibrant life. So this broadcast tonight speaks to our current state of affairs as it relates to Black lives. We are hopeful that the discussions that the men will have in this roundtable will share some insight and some possible solutions to what we are currently dealing with. We know that we matter. We know that all people matter, but because we are having such devastation as it relates to our Black men, we want to talk specifically to them tonight. So without further delay, I am going to share with you the gentleman that will be joining me. We have Mr. Aubrey Sims. We have Mr. Cornell McBride. We have Mr. Dwayne Martin. We have Mr. David Alexander III, and we have Gerald Gooding Sr. And I am going to invite all of them in at one time, and they will introduce themselves to you. So without further delay, here they come. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, I feel honored to be in the midst with each and every one of you guys. As I said, I have the honor of having some distinguished gentlemen here this evening. And so I'm excited about the conversation. And so that we can keep things moving, I would like for you all to take a minute or so and just briefly introduce yourself to the audience in whatever style you'd like to do that. So we'll start with Aubrey Sims. If you would introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Aubrey Sims, and I attend the church at Divine Faith Ministry, actually in the college at Divine Faith Ministry. And I am currently right now working on my small business. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, born in South Fulton Hospital.
All right.
All right.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Next up, Mr. Cornell McBride.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cornell McBride. I am a licensed professional insurance agent. I'm also an executive director within the Legal Shield business. I love helping people. I'm excited about this call tonight with these incredible young men. And thank you, Shenita, for allowing me to be a part.
Yes, thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Dwayne Martin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dwayne Martin. I have a company called Martin Social Education and Entertainment, LLC, where I do youth development programming with youth who are incarcerated or on probation. I work with court systems and police departments in order to help young people understand the law. I'm also a certified educator in the field of social studies, grades 7 through 12, and I'm a professional musician, saxophone player as well. I'm glad to be here this evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And next up, we have David Alexander III.
Well, good evening, and it is a pleasure to be among the hostess, and among such distinguished gentlemen. My name is David Alexander III. I'm a pastor of Jesus Holy Tabernacle Church in Pensacola, Florida. I'm also a retired city police chief who served 32 years in law enforcement. And I also do mentoring for the Department of Juvenile Justice, and as well as a variety of activities in the community. And so, like I said, it's just a distinguished pleasure to be here among you this evening.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Gerald Gooding Sr.
Good evening. Just want to thank you again for this honor and privilege to be on here tonight with such distinguished gentlemen and yourself as the hostess. Again, my name is Gerald Gooding. I'm a Director of Operations for the Department of Defense for a organization, Manpower Personnel and Services. I'm retired military, originally from Pensacola, Florida, and now live in San Antonio, Texas.
Awesome, awesome. I am excited because I have two people from my hometown, one who happens to be my cousin, Mr. Gooding, and then Mr. Alexander there, who is a native Pensacolian too. So I feel real good tonight to be in all of your presence, but particularly my home team. So again, welcome, gentlemen. And as we begin our discussion, I want to just start out, as I have done previously, with why do you matter? As a African-American man, as a Black man, why do you matter? And we will start out with Mr. Aubrey Sims. If you would tell us why you matter. Why does your life matter?
I would like to say because we matter because a lot of us have learned the lesson in life concerning what we call it the golden rule, which is to treat others as you would want to be treated. And yesterday I was on Facebook and I actually seen two young kids. One was a black kid, and one was a white kid. And they was best friends. They was in kindergarten. They had dress alike, a twin day. And they dressed alike. And once we can get to the point of knowing, or getting the lesson or getting the understanding in life, that we can move forward together, because it's all about teamwork. It's not really about race. It's about teamwork. And that's how I see it. That's how I view it. And one of the best things I have done by the grace of God is to learn how to keep a conscience void of offense, because a lot of us get offended very easy but I keep a conscience by the grace of God of offense towards God and man. Because the things that we go through in life, you know, if we accept our dark moments as just tests and trials and knowing that tough time will come, I believe that we keep that focused mindset, we'll be able to face life in a different manner, have a different perspective about what's going on. But that's why we matter, because some of us have gotten the lesson in life.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Golden rule. Wonderful. Mr. Martin, will you share with us and the audience why you matter?
Sure. We, as Black men, we are the connection between our ancestors and the families that we currently raise. The whole notion of takes a village to raise a child. I myself, my mother was deceased when I was just an infant, and never knew my father. And to think the elders of people in the community, some of my educators, but primarily my coaches, my uncle, and some of my siblings, who I call my brothers, who are naturally born my cousins. Those lessons have to be passed on. The understanding of how we get back to the grace of the Creator, right? We live this life, we're given talents and gifts only to get back to the Creator, and for those people around us to learn the lessons, as was mentioned before, about how to live life, how to treat people right. But more than anything, we are important because we lead our families. We lead our families and we develop our families. And we teach those up under us who God has given us the privilege to raise. We teach them how also to be in grace and favor with the Lord and how to move forward in that. And that's a huge undertaking and a huge task. And without our presence, we can't expect for anything positive or constructive to come out of our families nor our communities. And so that's just scratching the surface. But that's a quick response to why I believe we matter.
That's right. And, you know, I know your story firsthand, and just knowing your story, I could tell that your grandmother and your aunts that you always talk so passionately about did an exceptional job with raising you, you know, and the wisdom that you have and the knowledge that you have is to be applauded. People just need to know you and hear your story, and they'll understand that statement. So yes, I get it. Mr. Alexander.
Well, you know, first of all, the hyphen between the year you were born and the year you die represents you and everything you ever did, everything that you would be able to contribute to the advancement of your generation. We are actually a conduit. We are in everything we do, what we teach. We become the bridge between the present and the future generation and the destiny that they're headed to. So who I am and what I do makes a difference. You know, my life makes a difference. My life counts. So of course, being a Black man, my life counts and my life matters because it's going to really determine whether the future generation is going to be resilient, whether the future generation will understand their own identity. And sometimes when you don't know who you are, it's kind of hard for you to determine what your purpose in life is. And I know a lot of people have heard about Rick Warren's purpose-driven life, but it's not about you per se, but it is about how you live and what you're going to transfer to the future generation. And so the things that I've accomplished would be worthless if it wasn't something that I could leave in terms of a legacy or a standard or even a pattern of resilience to my sons and my daughters. So my life matters. My life counts.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you said a legacy, because as you're leaving that legacy for your children, and then they're leaving that legacy for their children, and it continues. And if we understand that we matter and we all have purpose, you know, there's going to always be a positive outcome with that mindset and that behavior. So I thank you for that. And Mr. Gooding.
Yes, I kind of put two thoughts together that Dwayne and the pastor had together. And when he talked about legacy, I know a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And I know a lot of times when we think of inheritance, we think of something that's physical, maybe monetary or economical. But when we're leaving
Monetary.
that inheritance, we leave legacy, like the pastor said before. And we want to leave a legacy because if you don't know who you are, it's very hard for you to carry on. And we know that as it said in the Bible, that people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So we want to be able to pass that knowledge on. And if you think about it, as humans, we're one of the only we're the only animal that can really have reasoning, whether that be morality or spirituality. So we're here to leave it just not for ourselves, but pass it on to the next generation so they'll know who they are and they'll be able to stand for the things that we have taught them and been passed down from generation to generation. So that's the reason we matter. We're here to be a pass through, not just for ourselves, not just, and as the pastor said, yeah, the dash is important, but what will you be remembered for when you're not here anymore?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you do in between the day you were born and the day you pass on? What is that purpose-driven life about? And how long will it take you to discover that? That's good. And so last but certainly not least, Mr. McBride, why do you matter? Why do African-American Black men matter? Mr. McBride?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. All right. So for me, we're talking about why we matter. You know, I'm the father of two young men, a 19-year-old who serves in the Army and a 4-year-old. So a pretty good spread between the two of them. But one thing that I began to realize is that as we see in today's world, things are changing. And those two young men are going to be a part of a different culture than what we even live in today. One of the things that I'm excited about is, you know, being a small business owner, is the opportunity for them to be in a position where they don't have to rely on someone else for finance, for them not to have to rely on someone else for income, to be able to leave them a legacy where they don't not only have the finances available, but they have the education that comes with the finances. There's a lot of people that make money. They're still living paycheck to paycheck. There's more people that earn $50,000 a year that have financial freedom. Why is that? It's the education and the understanding of how money works. So what my priority is trying to create a culture in our household where my children could, as you said, you know, the legacy that I leave behind for them would not just be money, but it would be the education. It would be integrity. It would be the opportunity that we have as young Black men to really build and create a culture of our own where we're independent rather than codependent on society. And at the same time, they have to understand that with the time and the culture that we live in, the times can be dangerous. I don't want them to live in fear, but I want them to be aware. And I think that's important for our young Black men and women to know now is that, look, we all matter. All lives matter. But we have to figure out, you know, how to take care of ourselves first, and then how to make sure that we can avoid such.
Technology, and we talked about that. So that was some great feedback, and so hopefully he'll be able to jump back in. But I love the fact that, you know, he's leaving education, and he wants those children to not only be financially independent, but educationally, and their character, integrity, all of that matters. So we appreciate that feedback. So let's keep the conversation going. How are you all feeling today in the midst of all that's going on as it relates to, you know, the incident with George Floyd and so many other horrible incidents that have happened to Black men in particularly? How are you feeling? Aubrey, can you briefly tell us how are you feeling?
Well, I feel a lot of favor because tough times, like as I said before, tough times will come. And I know that tough people last longer than tough times. So in being tough and you know, praying for the families of the lost loved ones and just being encouraged to know that it wasn't you and that you're favored by it is more than overwhelming to know that, you know, by God's grace, when you're kept when you're kept by his power and you understand that you in a win-win situation, whether it would have happened to you or not, that's, you know, I feel more grace than anything because of security, you know, of what I have my faith in and who I have my faith in. And I just say that, you know, tough times will come because in this time that the whole is very viral that, you know, the incident happened, and you know we see that it was heartbreaking, it was overwhelming, I'm pretty sure, for the family, but in knowing that this too shall pass, I believe that we can be encouraged as well.
Amen. Amen. All right, Mr. Martin, how are you feeling in the midst of all of this?
Very optimistic in the sense that, you know, this is a new millennium. And like you say, I love history. I'm a history guy. 100 years ago, the United States had gone through a variety of changes, from the Great Migration to factories being built to a pandemic in and of itself, the end of a world war. We were on the verge of defining what would be the 20th century. I think this is defining what will become the 21st century, the way that we adjust. And so I would be remiss to say that I was shocked when the pandemic hit, and then to see some of the injustices that were being televised and recorded, and you know, I got to a point where I kind of became frozen for a moment, you know, not driving at night by myself anymore, just being very honest about that, not driving in places without having the proper precautions for the protocol that may approach. And when I think throughout my life, I know this question will come up later, I've had several instances where I've had guns drawn on me by law enforcement in the course of my life, like I'm sure other of the panel members may have experienced as well. And so you almost become, when you're subjected to it like that, you become somewhat desensitized to what really goes on, right? You kind of leave the house knowing that it's always possible, and you pray. And as I've gotten older and have other people to be responsible for, I can't hold my head down and begin to be somber because the two young ones are not feeling that same pressure, right? Because they don't have the same, they're not in the same environment. So they learn by example, right? So if we're strong and we're adamant, and instead of crawling up and balling up, we begin to start lining up, right? Putting things together to make sure we make it through, then they'll take on the same persona. And when they run into troubles that will come with the generations that they live in, they're going to remember, how did dad make adjustments when we couldn't go anywhere? Or what did dad do? He went and got his license and he went to the firing range and he showed us how to survive without the power and the electricity and without having, you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm optimistic that this is an opportunity for us to turn the tables over if we're positive in our favor.
Amen. That's good. That's good. I'm optimistic too. So thank you for that. Mr. Alexander.
Yes, well, you know, I think it's a time for us to really step up and to, first of all, I say I'm more hopeful that this is the change that we've been wanting, not knowing exactly how it was going to take place, but circumstances will create opportunities for change. the things that are happening in law enforcement and the criminal justice system has been a catalyst of events, in addition to the COVID-19, that will force us to become resilient in ways that we never thought that we would have to be resilient. And certainly it's not the first time in the history of humanity that this has had to happen. But sometimes we tend to forget the struggle. We tend to forget where we come from in terms of the struggle, and begin to stray off in different ideologies, thinking that everything is okay when it's not okay. I think it raises our consciousness up to the point where we need to be particular about where we invest our time, our money, and even our energies, because sometimes we can get caught up in trying to be quote unquote equal, and we're actually losing things that we should be cherishing, such as a strong and rich heritage of being resilient. We've gone through difficult times, so I'm hopeful that this is going to be a teachable moment, not only for some that may have had it easy over the last 2 or 3 decades, but it's definitely going to open our eyes up and make us a lot wiser in the choices that we'll make from this day forward. And it's definitely going to teach the younger generation that things are not as easy and happy-go-lucky as they will want it to be. We don't want our grandchildren to grow up being paranoid, but we want them to be engaging into these systems so that they can learn how to mitigate these systems. These systems will work for them rather than work all the time against them. And that means we got to be fully engaged. And so I think we're being forced to that platform right now. And so I am hopeful that we're going to make it through, and that we're going to have a future generation that is very cognizant of what it's going to take to survive from this day forward.
That's good. I like that. And I've not seen the younger generation be as involved as I've seen it over the past few months, and it is so encouraging. It's forcing them to get involved with the system, the politics, and understanding how things go, the order. So it is not in vain that we're going through what we're going through. I think it's going to be a great outcome in the long run. So thank you for that. Mr. Gooding?
Yes, and I want to agree with all my panelists that are here today, even some of the things that they're said. And I know many things are birthed out of adversity. You know, many things are birthed out of adversity, and life is difficult, like's been said before. But 3 words come to mind when I think about it. I'm sensitive, first of all, to everything that's going on around me, and I understand that even in the midst of these things going on, we have to ask ourselves 3 questions: why am I here? What is my purpose? And what am I doing to fulfill that purpose? And if you keep that all in perspective, you'll understand how you fit into this whole picture. So just remain sensitive, because things are still happening. And then also, I feel partially responsible. Have I kept my responsibility to those who've come before me, those who are here that are still with me, and those that will come behind me? Because I am responsible. I am my brother's keeper. And sometimes we forget that, you know, that we're supposed to, iron is supposed to sharpen iron. But we sharpen the countenance of our friend. So we can't forget, you know, we take things on different perspectives. And sometimes we'll say, well, if I made it out of a certain situation, everyone should be able to make it out of a certain situation. But everybody's situation isn't the same. Just because you made it out, you have to look at the different perspectives. And the last thing that I have, or last word that I have, like I said, sensitive, responsible, and is optimistic, that's been said before. Because I believe change is coming, because I think we are headed in the right direction. People are coming together, and people are more aware right now, more than ever before, time in history, of what needs to take place, because we understand that we've been given a chance here to change the course of history, and we don't want to just let it go awry.
Amen. That's good. I love that. We're sensitive, we're responsible, and we are
Optimistic.
I love it. Thank you. Mr. McBride, how do you feel?
Optimistic. You know, I think I think for the first time, due to technology and the way we're living now, everybody worldwide gets to see what we were talking about. Not for the past decade, the past 2 decades, the past 50 years. You know, when I think back, you know, in the 90s when people saw the Rodney King beating, you know, there were people that watched that beating and they knew there was no way it was justified. They just sat there and watched police officers hit a man 170 something times with a baton. And they were like, wow, oh, but well, there's no way you could say that he was resisting or he was a threat. And it was just really, it was like an old fashioned butt whooping. But to be done by police officers to a man sitting in the middle of the street and then to go to court and to find the court says none of them are guilty, no excessive force. Everybody, 90% of people had to look at that and just be like, what does it take? What does it take for this to make, this doesn't make sense. And I think what happened is even though it was 20 years ago, it got the people to the point where they felt uncomfortable. Like they got to the point where they felt bad for us because they were like, wow, like we thought they were exaggerating by the pictures of the lynchings on the trees. We thought that only happened once in a while. And then you turn around and you have a catalyst like the Breonna Taylor situation, the Trayvon Martin situation, and the Eric Gardner situation, and the Sandra Bland situation. Now you're seeing this over and over again, and people are like, okay, we might have a problem. But there's always been a different narrative that the police were trying to put out there. There's always a narrative. They were a threat and they were disrespectful, and you didn't see what happened off camera. Well, everybody in the world has just about seen that video with George Floyd. And that, I believe, was a catalyst, and it shook people to the core because this man having his knee on this man's neck, his posture, his demeanor was callous. That man didn't care. It was as if, even knowing that all the people that were around with cameras, with cell phones, recording, he didn't care. And I think that's what really bothered people. They were like, yo, nobody said, this man did not care about what was happening and the way they treated him. And I think that was something that became unnerving to a lot of people because at that point they realized that police officer was not only beyond control, but he felt like there was no consequences that it would ever happen to him. And then you go back, and not just the white cops, then you go back while they're protesting, and you see our own people of our own culture busting in the window, tasing these college kids that were obviously no threat. And I think then people looked at it again and said, okay, wait a minute. There may be a problem with policing. And then not days later, Rayshard Brooks, the tasers popped off twice. This man is running as fast as he can in the opposite direction. And you didn't shoot for his leg. You didn't shoot for his arm. You shot at this man to kill him. And I think at this point, what people are seeing is, okay, things are pretty much out of control. But I think they're giving it more attention now than ever because of the financial damages that it's costing every single state. When we burn stuff down, this is different than Rosewood. This is different than Tulsa. When they burned it down, they went out with guns and killed hundreds of people. We haven't got to that point yet, but please believe more Black people are armed now than ever before in history. And when we get to the point where we feel like we've been pushed beyond what's reasonable, people are going to start reacting differently. And we saw this happen 4 or 5 years ago when we saw the Marines ambush the officers in Texas and ambush the officers in New Orleans. There's some people that are just not going to lay down. And I think people now are at a place where they got to figure out something to do to start making an example of these officers and holding them accountable. Like charging this last officer and Rayshard Brooks for giving him a felony murder, they're going to have to make an example of that man, because we're at a point now where people aren't going to settle for anything less.
Absolutely.
If they saw the protest and the damages that we were doing before, let Chauvin or Rolf not go to jail for life, and they're going to really see this country get turned inside out.
Absolutely. And so to continue this conversation, tell us about your first negative interaction with law enforcement. And I know, David, your career has been in law enforcement, but as a law enforcement career person and one that will continue if you have a win in Pensacola, have you ever had negative encounters on your off time with law enforcement?
Yes, I have. I mean, and the thing about it is I can respect the fact that there are a lot of things going wrong in law enforcement. But sometimes when we make a lot of generalities, it really makes solving problems very complicated. I've experienced being pulled over even after being retired, and that's one of the reasons why I believe that accountability is something that the public should demand, and a lot of times we're demanding it in a way that's not going to be very successful. But it's kind of amazing how we can stimulate everybody's economy with the way we spend money, and not demand that we be respected and treated with dignity like any other human being. I'm not going to tell you that burning down towns is going to solve your problem. It's not going to solve your problem. What it does, it spans the scopes of lawlessness that even exist in our own African American neighborhoods. So what happens when we're at war with police as a culture, as a people, and then we got lawlessness in our neighborhoods? So what do you think is going to happen? We're going to self-destruct from the inside out. And so that's why I really believe that you're not going to solve unemployment problems by burning towns down. I understand the logic behind it, but like I said, you're not going to accomplish anything like that. But the thing about it is, at some point, you got to go back in biblical history. We're not living something strange in our lifetime that has not already been lived before. But it's the part about it says that righteousness exalts a nation. And one of the things that America has to learn, is going to learn the hard way, is you don't learn how to treat people right, then you're not going to be successful, and you're going to fall to the destruction at your own hand. It's going to be part of America's own poverty. But at the same time, as people, we're not making even a stronger righteous argument by countering evil with evil. So I really believe that we gotta go back to how do we survive in those days. And what I'm saying is not becoming defenseless, because you have to defend yourself. But to become lawless, you're justifying the lawlessness that's taking place. So I really believe that we're much smarter and intelligent than that. I believe that we can use our resources in a way that will get attention quick. I often remind the younger generation about the Montgomery bus boycott and the economic impact it had, that started to change minds and attitudes about this whole issue about racial justice. So I really believe that we got to look back in the old playbooks of resilience and really start looking at what worked and what didn't work, because there is a danger to us when lawlessness runs amok.
And I'm glad you said the economic piece, because I started this series because it's approaching my husband's 5th year of his heart attack on next Tuesday, June 30th. And I remember us talking about this when he was alive, and he said the only way that we're going to make a difference or to get the majority's attention is economics, is through economics. And I think if we understand the impact in that way, he said to me, they understand dollars and cents. And so we do have to go back to some of those things that worked back in the day, because I still think that they work today, and support each other as a race. I think those things will move us ahead, move us forward. So to keep the conversation going, I am going to go to Gerald, and I want to ask a different question. What do you propose that will, start making progress as it relates to race relations in this country? What do you propose? What do you think are some solutions to?
What are you finished with your question?
Yes.
I know I kind of jumped in there. I think we've already started to talk. I think before, and what I mean, we started the conversations, but we don't need to just leave it at the conversations. Actions need to be able to take place. A lot of times we perceive, like, even we have all these distinguished Black men on the panel tonight, but we all have, like I said again, different perspectives. Where I'm coming from may not be the same. I heard somebody from California. I know Pastor and I are both from Pensacola. We got some folks in here from Atlanta, but we all sometimes speak a different language. So we need to all get in the room and not just listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth, but the message. Because sometimes we miss the message that people are coming out. And Shenita, you can attest to this. We went to school and it was probably about 97% white, and we only had probably about 3% Blacks. But during that time, not falling asleep, we still were able to get along. We know things were going on. That's not even a message. But some of those folks we know that are still our friends today. Because why? We had the hard conversation. We talked about it. We listened to each other, and you got to be able to see it from that perspective. Like the pastor said, nothing is going to get done if I'm always angry. I'm always mad. I'm going off the handle. I just can't make you see my point. I have to sit down and communicate and have some empathy, because sometimes people just don't understand what's going on. And if you're able to convey your message to them, like I said, don't just listen to the words, then a lot of times it's easier to be able to understand. I once heard a pastor friend of mine say, misunderstanding is understanding by the person who misunderstood. Meaning sometimes you just don't even know what you're listening to. So if you take time to listen, I think with the communications, then I think we'll be a lot better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to go to Aubrey, our youngest one here. Do you have any suggestions on how we can move forward and make progress as it relates to race relations?
Well, my number one thing is prayer, but then I want to also say that what we're doing now, letting our voice be heard, because our voice matters, and communication is the key to a lot of positive things moving forward. Because if we don't have communication, we really don't have no relationship, and relationship is very vital in this time, because we need to build together. If we stand together, we can move forward. But a divided house, it cannot stand. So speaking up and knowing that your voice matter and coming together and continue to do things like this, I believe it will be edifying to others.
I totally agree, and I think it's important for us to get involved on our local level. And Dwayne, we've talked about this and have been involved in the community in numerous ways. And I think it's important for us to have a voice, get involved, make sure that we're registered to vote, make sure that we are voting, make sure we understand how important those local elections are to making change. A lot of times we're not educated, or something happened during a season on this journey. Like, I'm not sure what happened, but I was taught by my parents the importance of our civic responsibility. So I instilled that in my children. But somehow, somewhere along the way, we lost the understanding of how important that is. That's a part of our voice too, is getting involved in your local neighborhood elections, being involved in the NAACP, being involved in all of those things that can progressively move us forward. Dwayne, what do you suggest that we do as it relates to some solutions to race relations issues that we're having?
Yeah, it's ironic that you asked that question only because it's been several weeks. I'm looking at a post I put out on June 2nd as we were in the midst of turmoil. Just something I posted on Facebook because I saw many of my colleagues and Facebook friends kind of going back and forth with this dialogue. Okay, and to set the context for you, because some of you may be very familiar with the Oakland Bay area, some of you may not. Growing up there, it was what you call the not the overt racism, right, but the covert racism, and it was a situation where our neighborhoods were very multicultural. So I grew up with every type of human being on the planet within the neighborhoods, and those were my friends. Like you say, children, we played together, and it wasn't until you go see a guidance counselor and they tell you that you should be on the track to not have the same success as another student who has the same exact profile as you but doesn't look like you, that you begin to realize that there's some differences being made in an organizational sense. And I think I agree with you when you talk about civic relationships. I think up until the decade of maybe the 70s, we were very, very firm in our civic responsibility as a community of Black Americans, wanting to compete, I listened to Cornell discuss economics and what traits to pass down to the children, right? And when you think about capitalism, it wasn't meant for us to capitalize. We were to be capitalized upon. So what we're facing is trying to equal a playing field that was never ever intended for us to have that kind of stake and participation. And so what happens is you look at people become disenfranchised and then become discouraged, right? Because I know many people who sit on that fence of not voting, right? Very intelligent people with PhDs and all types of degrees, but they have taken the road that that doesn't mean much because it hasn't proven to them on the other side to be the kind of outcome that they wanted to have. And so I put these tenets out just on June 2nd. 7 tenets, right? Number one, always protect yourself and your family. That's number one. Always protect yourself and your family. Number two, continue to protest until there are convictions and policy changes. So, we tend to be lulled, right? We get a few convictions and we see some court trials, and then we're no longer in the street going for the next item on the agenda that still needs to be accomplished. We tend to forget and fall back into our lives and of living every day. The third tenet, continue to pursue education. Okay, when you look at the founding of this country was built by some of the most intelligent people ever, and they learned more as apprentices, right? Before we became college educated, they just had skills and they knew how to do things. And from that, we grew into an educational format. If you study that history, you'll learn that the North had education, formal education in universities by 1750, whereas the South didn't get them until 1850. That's why you see such a big gap in achievement, even as we move forward today. The fourth tenet, do business with those that do business with you, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what their ethnic background is, because that's how you build an economic infrastructure. You have to do business. They talk about the money in the Jewish community turns over 18 times before it leaves the community, compared to the dollar that we spend goes straight out of the community as soon as we spend it. So that's the fourth tenet. Fifth tenet, create community assets where businesses have been destroyed and burned. Some of those businesses that have been burned down, they haven't created scholarships or opportunities for those students that didn't look like them or come from the same family background. So I can understand why some people would want to get rid of them, because they've done nothing to serve them other than they patronize and spend their money out. But you can take that property, you can take that land, and you can build and revitalize communities with a different mindset there. Sixth tenet, it says barter here, barter, share, and invest in essential industries of consumption. We do too much conspicuous consuming in our communities to really deal with the issues at hand. If we had a strong economic base, which we're seeing that every time a company goes out and says something derogatory about Black Lives Matter or anything related to these particular events that are happening, those companies turn right back around because they want our money, right? They turn right back around because they want our dollars. And so we have to learn how to get back to bartering and doing and trading skills, as opposed to falling into the trap of this capitalism, and understanding that it's not intended for us to succeed. The last tenet is I said, study U.S. history from 1600 to the present to understand how to dismantle the oppression and disenfranchisement that we experience. It's no way that we can have an educated conversation. And so when we begin to talk to the people on the other side that don't see law enforcement as being oppressive, that don't see the courts as being disenfranchising. You know why? Because they do not know our history, because they never cared to learn our history. And we know theirs, but they don't know ours. And so when we're having conversations, bringing these things up, bringing these things to light, and sometimes you'll have a winning conversation. And sometimes cognitive dissonance on their part is going to win. That's what we see in the Oval Office now. The sky is blue. He'll look up and say, I don't see blue. And everybody around understands what I mean by that analogy. And so these are some of the things that I think if we put forth as a community, we'll be able to strengthen ourselves without wanting so much to be accepted into the capitalistic and democratic society that has been put for us to fit in, that really doesn't work for us.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Those 7 catalysts, did you say?
7 tenets. That's
7
correct.
tenets. 7 tenets. I appreciate every one of them. And so I know we're closing in on our time for this evening, but I do want to give each of you an opportunity to say some parting words before we close down. Just take a few moments, if you will, and share just a few parting words. And we'll start with Cornell. Brief parting words, if you may.
Mr. Martin, that was absolutely phenomenal. I done wrote your name and number down. You will be hearing from me, brother.
Yes, sir. Let's work together.
Yes, absolutely. One thing that me and Shenita talk about is following your dollar. There's no reason, there's no logical reason why, with us having as much access to so much capital between our athletes, our entertainers, our real estate brokers, our people that are in Wall Street, there's no reason we couldn't start rebuilding Black communities. They're not building more land. We could afford to get land. We have to be able to put ourselves in a situation where a group of us can say, hey, we can work together, set aside some of maybe our personal differences, our political or religious differences, and we got to start rebuilding. There's no reason why 100 years after Tulsa, we shouldn't have 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 cities like Tulsa. And then there's no reason. So buy Black.
That's right.
I believe that all of the major league sports, I believe all the Black athletes, I think they need to sit out. They're trying to get them to go back. They're only trying to get them to go back because they're losing money. Let them lose money. We need to, like Shenita said, we need to genuinely start supporting our local community, like our people running for sheriff, our pastors in the community. And something that Dwayne Martin said was, it's a shame that in the 1920s, the Black dollar circulated through Wall Street for almost an entire year. And 100 years later, the Black dollar circulates in a Black community less than 6 hours. There's no way, but you can't win that way. And we allow all these other people come put soul food restaurants, Chinese food restaurants, Indian restaurants. We got Chinese selling soul food, Mexicans selling soul food. But you will not see any of our businesses in the Indian community, in the Asian community, in Chinatown. So we gotta get together, put on our big boy hat and say, look, y'all, if we don't take what we want and create what we want right now, and this is the greatest time in our history to be able to have this access to this much wealth and create what we want to leave for our kids now, it's never going to happen.
Awesome. Aubrey, any parting words?
I just want to say, everyone be encouraged to have compassion to make a difference, and continue to pour into the youth. I work with the youth ministry at my church, and when you know that you're leading by example, and you know your purpose, you can move with a purpose. So I want everybody to be encouraged to continue to have that compassion to make a difference.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Alexander.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you, gentlemen, each and every one of you, for your insight and contribution in this conversation. This is something that's very healthy. And what I would like to say in parting comments is that, we should be trying to get more of our peers in the African American community to be like-minded. And I think one of the barriers is that sometimes we cannot get over the things that have traumatically affected us to the point where we can, take advantage of these opportunities, better utilize resources that are available. We got a wealth of wisdom just in our neighborhoods, and I believe that investing in your own African American neighborhood is the way to turn things around. Because it's a shame that when we lose property, we find out afterwards how valuable it was when we lost it for crumbs. So I believe we got to learn to think more of ourselves than we have in the past, learn how to love ourselves and work through whatever traumatic experience we've had so that we can heal and then use that as a reason why we will succeed. So self-analysis, self-awareness is very powerful to anybody moving forward.
I love it. That's how we became Life with Shenita. That's what happened. Moving forward, taking that tragedy and moving forward. So, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I'm glad that we had the discussion this evening. I appreciate all of the gentlemen on the panel and all the contributions that you all are making in your own communities, in your own ways. And what I would say now is that we need to utilize this internet to build that infrastructure of communication and know what each other's doing, what each other has to offer to help build communities. Mr. McBride, you know that the banks are not going to give us those loans. And it's all about us putting together 20, 25 people for investment for those properties to build those assets that we want to have. And so let's utilize the internet, because it wasn't intended for us to utilize it for productive and positive contributions. Let's take everything they've tried to use against us, and let's utilize it for the benefit and the good of our own communities and who we serve. And I think we'll be better off for it.
Awesome. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Gooding.
Well, first, Shenita, I just want to thank you for your initiative and using this platform just to educate not only everyone else, but to educate ourselves. I really enjoyed the men on the panel. And even as I've been meditating over the last couple of days, and I know Mr. McBride and Mr. Martin alluded to it, we for so long have been chasing a dream that was never really ours. That dream that we were chasing wasn't ours. And I mean that power, the riches, the economic, and the things. And what we need to do, and Pastor Alexander said it earlier, we need to get back to knowing who we are. And we know that this change is a process, and process takes time. So we just can't have this talk here on the 23rd of June, for 1 hour and just let it go from there. We have to go back to and start even with our families, our neighborhoods, before we can go any further. And one thing I always keep in mind that, we need faith. And I know Aubrey was talking about it. I know you're a man of God. We need that faith. But faith, remember, isn't for the promise, because we'll get to the promise. But faith is for the process. So as you're going through that process, make sure you keep your faith.
Awesome. I just want to say, let me give you guys a round of applause. Myself, because you guys are amazing and you matter to me. You matter to your family. You matter to this world. You matter to people that don't even know you. And most importantly, you matter to the Creator. You matter because you're here. So we all have purpose, and I certainly appreciate you guys for taking the time out of your schedule to be here to talk about why you matter. And I hope that the next time you have an encounter with law enforcement, that they are more tolerant of you and not intolerant because of the color of your skin. So I appreciate you, and I hope that you are celebrated wherever you are, and I hope that you guys will stay connected, because you are connected, because I have connected you in my phone. So you guys will stay connected to each other, and I wish you all nothing but the best on this journey. And I am here to do whatever I can do in the process. And so I thank you again, and I'm honored and grateful to have you guys here with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings
Thank
to each and every one of you all.
Same to
Thank
you all.
you.
God
Good
bless.
night. And
Blessings.
audience, stay tuned for one moment. We're going to do a live drawing for the last 2 weeks of our show that we have not been able to do. So stay tuned, everyone else. Thank you,
God
gentlemen.
bless you, fellas. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank
Have a
you.
good
All right,
night. All right, everybody have a good night.
You too.
So thank you all for watching. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your attention, and we hope that you will get involved in your communities and that you will make a difference. You will have the conversations, but you will go a step further and you will get involved in the protests, in the NAACP organizations and other organizations alike. So I encourage you guys to stay connected and be purposeful on this journey. So I am having to join me, my manager this evening. We have not had the drawing for the last 2 weeks, and we need to do those drawings tonight. And it is going to be for two $25 cash prizes. And so she has done the privilege of taking care of that for me. And so I am going to invite her in. Miss Katasha Bird is going to join me at this time. Good evening, Sunshine.
Hello, honey.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you today?
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So I just told them that, I'm behind 2 weeks in the drawing. And so I sent that information to you to make that happen. And so I'm bringing you in to do just that. Announce the winners or whatever, however it is that you want to do it for those two individuals for the $25 cash prizes.
Okay. Well, we'll just jump right into it. The first winner from the first week is Wanna D Days, and hopefully I am saying that right.
Wanna D Days.
A-N-A.
Her name is Luana.
If you're here today or if you see this broadcast, know that you won from 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And we'll also inbox you as well to let you know that you've won your prize. Also from the second week is Vanita Reddy. So Vanita, you are also a winner for the drawing of Life with Shenita. So we will also inbox you, get in touch with you in regards to how you would like to receive your prize. Okay.
So I thank you. You are the absolute best, the absolute best. And I don't know if you want to say anything to the audience in terms of moving forward, the process on sharing the posts, commenting, etc. But if you want to take that time to share with them, that would be awesome.
Yes, I'm basically just want to ask everybody to bear with us as we kind of maneuver through this process. It is fairly new for Shenita, and of course, being as OCD as I am, she needed me behind the scenes. But also make sure that when you like the page, that you share the broadcast. Also, be sure to check her out on YouTube, Life with Shenita as well. Like those, whatever support we can get, we would definitely appreciate it. We're here to empower you, to help you better understand life and to maneuver through it. So basically, we just really, at the end of the day, we really thank you for all of your support. And we just hope that from this day forward, we can just continue to grow. Okay?
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better. And I so appreciate all of your help. And I just want to remind the audience to tune in weekly on Thursdays, which is our weekly schedule show, outside of the mini series that we sometimes host. But tune in Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays at 7 p.m. And we just want to thank you for the support thus far. And if
Yes.
there's any, show topics that they would love to see or hear, that we're open to those as well. And starting tomorrow, Life with Shenita will be aired on FAM Radio talk radio show tomorrow evening, weekly on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So really excited about that opportunity of elevation. So grateful for that. And we want to remind the audience too, to make time for what matters. We talk about that often, and your family will be grateful that you did in all of this. Make time for what matters, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people have their affairs in order. And also we want to remind them to be prepared for the inevitable, because it's coming.
Oh, yes. Without a doubt. No man knows the day or the hour, but we should always be ready.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, I just don't think that there's a better place. One of the better places to get that information from is here. So,
yes. Yeah. And as you alluded earlier about the YouTube channel, if Madison was here, she'd say, subscribe.
Yeah, and hit the notification bell.
Right. Please subscribe. So please subscribe. And so we want to thank you guys for joining us this evening. We also want to remind you that we love you, but God loves you more, and He loves you best. We could not be where we are if it wasn't for His love for us and His continued grace and mercy that He walks with us each and every day. Because I think about 5 years ago, almost to the day on next Tuesday, that if it wasn't for Him walking this journey with me, I would have clocked out already. So I'm truly grateful that 5 years later, this year of grace, that I am still here and still determined to live a purposeful life. So I am grateful to have you on this journey with me.
Yes, I'm grateful that you were determined, because you were determined, I got you.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so we want to remind them also to email any questions, any topics. Again, that's my email address there. Yes, it is AOL. But that can be upgraded. But for now, use it. The books, Abiding Love and Is Your House in Order, can both be purchased on Amazon. We also want to remind you to support the initiative, Is Your House in Order, and get your affairs in order. So we thank you for joining us tonight. And with that being said, thank you, Katasha, for the drawings. And we have two winners, and their names again: Luana D. Days, who is Luana Reeves. She is my church sister, so I know she's probably excited about that. And the other person, Vernita, you said?
Yes, Ready.
Vernita Ready. We'll find whoever she is, we'll find her and cash app them both their prize winning. So thank you all for joining us again, and you guys have an amazing rest of your evening. And do not forget, Thursday, I have the privilege of having 5 amazing couples to talk about surviving the marriage journey. So tune in Thursday at 7 p.m. for an amazing broadcast.
Oh, yes. Married people, be ready.
Yes. Ready. And those who desire marriage can learn something from that one, I would say. Would that be you? Yes. Yes. Yes.
I have a minute. Got a minute. Give me a minute.
Yes. So so it's going to be a great show.
Really nice show.
Yes,
gonna
it
be a
is
great
going to be a great one. So,
Yeah.
all
Well,
right.
thank you everybody for tuning in. We thank you for all of your support. Have a good night.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Katasha.